I don't want you to do my thinking. I want you to challenge my thinking. I want you to sharpen my thinking. Don't ever kiss my ass. Don't ever suck up to me. Don't ever say anything to make me feel good about myself. I'm not looking for validation. I'm looking for information.
I'm Mike Allen, co-founder of Axios, and we're going to plunge in to the ways that AI has changed Jim's mind, mood, and performance. We thank Accenture for making these conversations possible. Jim VandeHei, co-founder of Axios, you are AI pilled.
Well, I'm an AI lab rat. Starting a year ago, we made the conscious decision that we were going to be all in on AI, both to really understand what it means for our company, what it means for our employees, but also what it means for our readers and for ourselves. And so to do that, I felt like, okay, as this guy running the company, I have to throw myself fully in. And really, I wanted to figure out like what's real and what's not real. And I'm baffled at times, but I now think I understand why a lot of people feel like it's overhyped, it doesn't work. It's because they don't have the time or they haven't had the interest in really putting in the work to get it to create the magic.
Zooming in on you as an AI lab rat, what do the models know about Jim?
Yeah, so I basically downloaded like probably an insane amount of information. Now I have an insane amount of information to download. So what do I mean? Every TED talk I've given, every public speech that I have a transcript of, every column I've written, every story I've written, every strategic memo that we've done internally. It has access to my notes function where I keep kind of my living diary and my repository of ideas. Anything that I find that I think is really interesting, I put into files. And so within both Claude and within ChatGPT, I work a lot just making sure its memory, that its memory remembers the things that are most important to me. And you can just ask it, what do you remember about me? And you can see, and I fine tune that. But then in the last 6 months, I've gone what I would call kind of next level AI. And this might be, I want to make sure this is like everyone understands what I'm saying, because like a lot of people don't use projects. But within Claude, if you just go into your little hamburger menu on the left, you can go into projects. When you create a project, it is basically any task that you plan to kind of keep revisiting, something that you want to build on. I have one for my wife's medical stuff. I have one for a book that I'm writing. I have one for CEOs. I have one for just kind of collecting all of like the views I have on different topics that come up in speeches. And then I want to keep fine tuning those so that I, if I ever need to remember like what's my latest thinking on Social Security, I can go and access it. And then when I'm working on those specific topics, I always work within that project. Within a project, you create an instruction and then files. And again, this sounds way more complicated than it is. Files is just you dump in anything relevant to that. So in my CEO one, I wrote a book on leadership, just the good stuff. So I put the transcript into a file. And so I have all kinds of files, but I also put every column on CEOs that I write, I put it in there so that every time it's thinking about how I might write or think, it can go back and look at exactly what I've written within the newsletter. And then the instructions are just you telling it, what am I trying to accomplish within this project? And there too, you could just voice it into Claude or into Gemini or into GPT and then say, hey, create instructions for me that I can put into a project, and it will help you do it. And you can say, ask me questions to sharpen it. It will help you do that. So that creates projects. So then the next level from that has been really in the last couple of months, starting to create agents. And think of agents as a project that works on its own. This is where you really get into like autonomous.
And it can work while you're sleeping.
It can work around the clock while you're sleeping. The cool thing once you get into an agent is you can put in skills, right? So in skills, I have a skills document for how I would design a product. I have a skills file for how I want to simplify everything that I do at work and in life. I have a skills for how I like to communicate, smart brevity with very specific principles. And so you set up that agent, you give it instructions, but it can work in the background. This sounds to most people like, wow, that's really complicated. Jim, you must really be a technologist. I'm not at all a technologist. The apps themselves are very good at teaching you how to create an agent. They now have a button, create an agent, and it will walk you through how to create an agent. It will walk you through creating those skills. Like you can do it at home and not in hours. Like, and if you spent a half hour, I think you would have a pretty good agent pretty quickly. And you're like, well, I don't know how to connect it to my email. It does. It does it for you. You just say connect to my email. And then you'll have to give it a permission. So it's not entering something it shouldn't enter. And it does it. And connect it to my Slack. Okay, connect it to it. I don't need to know what an API is or all this lingo that people use in technology. It just does it in a human fluent language.
Thank you. We're going to take a quick break for a message from our sponsor, Accenture. We thank Accenture for making these conversations possible.
I'm very excited about our reinvention story today, which is literally 160 years in the making.
The reinvention was trying to bring a company into the trends of the future.
So, because you speak a lot, write a lot, your Jim GPT is unusually rich. We were able to put in like all your transcripts, all your videos, all your writings. But if I'm a normal person, a normal writer, what could my corpus, my canon include that I'd want to inject to create a Jimmy GPT?
Well, if you have anything that you've written that you're proud of, if you've had anything that's ever been taped that you're proud of, I would plug that in. But I think you're saying, well, what if I don't have any of that?
Right.
Then what I would do is I would go for a walk and I would hit I would hit the voice.
I love this.
They're very good on voice. And I would just start talking about how you think, how you write, how you work. And I would start to talk with in great detail about how you wish you thought, how you wish you worked. And then I would ask it to engage you in conversation. I want you to start to ask me questions that will help sharpen a way for you as the AI to better understand how I think, what I do, what I aspire to do. And I want you to help me build out kind of an instruction manual for not just you, this specific AI, but all AI to be more useful to me. And it will go back and forth and it will fine tune it and it will write the instructions. You think, well, my God, it must be so hard to make instructions for an agent. Not at all. You could voice it into the machine. It will put it into a much more like AI friendly format and AI friendly language for you. But then you can start to get real results. And then once you do that, you can't stop there. Then once you start interfacing with it, it'll still screw things up. It'll still not be quite right. Just stop and say, that was dumb. Do it this way. Oh, that was great. More of that. You have to have that loop. And then once you create that loop, it's like you and I, right? If we are in conversation, let's say we didn't know each other and didn't hang out all the time, little by little, you would start to, oh, Jim is a little cranky here. Jim's really smart there. Jim's arrogant there. Oh, Mike is, he always
Frankie
flatters
there.
me, right? Like we would figure that out. And that's all AI is doing. And it's just doing it at a superhuman speed.
Last thing on this, because this talking into the phone is the most useful thing of all. What's an example of when you say how you think? What would be an example for you or someone you love?
Well, this video we're doing is based on a column I wrote called Confessions of an AI Lab Rat. The origin of that was I'm about to do a climb. And so I've been rucking. And so I had a lot of time and I was walking and I was like, you know what? I'm going to do what I've been saying. I started interfacing with it. I said, listen, I'm going to write Confessions of an AI Lab Rat. You know, my obsessions about AI. I want to make sure I'm not missing anything. And so I'm going to just free associate on the things that I think I've learned. And I want you to ingest that. I want you to remember it because I'm walking and I'm going to need to type this up. But I want you to ask me questions. And so we went through 10 different things and it would ask me questions. It took like an hour. Like it was back and forth, very specific questions. How do you do that? When do you do this? Did you really get that type of result? But it ended up like helping me think more broadly and more deeply about a topic. And that's a really important thing because there's a legitimate fear that you just outsource your thinking to AI. And if I could say anything that sticks with people on this video, it would be, don't do that. That's what you did with the algorithms. You just sat there and you passively consumed content. And a lot of that content was just crap. With AI, it's easy to just like ask it a question, get the answer, send it to your boss. That is kind of slop or it's like mediocrity. Don't do that. Like really train the AI to say like, I don't want you to do my thinking. I want you to challenge my thinking. I want you to sharpen my thinking. I want you to deepen my thinking. Ask skeptical questions. Speak to me clinically like a doctor. Don't ever kiss my ass. Don't ever suck up to me. Don't ever say anything to make me feel good about myself. I'm not looking for validation.
Right.
I'm looking for information.
You estimate you use AI 1 to 2 hours a day.
I think it depends on the day, and it depends on the subject. Like we run a company. I have a job, like other people do, and my job is to be CEO. And we write a lot, we speak a lot, we talk to staff, we make strategic decisions. But on most of those, I'm deeply involved in AI, and the company is. So I probably spend 1 to 2 hours actually inside using AI. I
Right.
probably
That
spend
sounds right.
another half of my time, at least half the time, talking about it.
That sounds right.
We have, we can go deeper into this, but like most of my leadership team, my head of finance, my head of operations, my head of technology, revenue, most of them have AI agents that they've created, right? So we did that as a team. A lot of them did it individually. We have meetings constantly about how to rank and file. Axions, that's what we call Axios employees, use it. And so, yeah, I mean, I probably spend a way, way, way more time thinking about it.
Yeah. I created one of those agents. How have you found them to be useful?
I mean, if you can get it right, and that is an if for a lot of people, it's working, doing your work on your own when you're not there. So I'll give you a good example of this. So I write a weekly newsletter to CEOs called Axios C-Suite. So if you're an executive, you should subscribe. You have to be a member of a C-Suite or C-Suite equivalent to get it. But in that, I have created an agent, what we call kind of my CEO scout, that all day, every day, it's off looking for anything that would be of interest to CEOs. It's set up so that it identifies the topics. It then finds adjacent information. It cites and double checks all the sources. It gives me direct links and direct dates to all the sources. It puts it into smart brevity. It develops that and it tracks that. And then I have a feedback loop between me and it saying, that's good, that's terrible, more of this, less of this. And it just helps like spur ideas. Now, it doesn't write the newsletter, and I wouldn't want it to. It's a pretty good writer. I'd say it's a better writer than most people. And again, there's like academics who argue with me. I just don't think most people are very good writers. I think it actually could be trained to be an excellent writer. But I think I'm a better writer than it. Maybe I'm too arrogant on that, but I do, and I have a very distinct voice and cadence.
I get your scout, and I think that we thought that we saw everything, but it's amazing what it finds.
Yeah, when we say we saw everything, like Mike, you probably read more words,
I
more
thought I
stories than
did.
any person in the world.
Not than
And I feel
scout.
like I consume a silly amount of information. It always is finding reports and stories, especially stuff overseas or in research papers
And
and
that's
data things.
really important. It really matters. And it's like, how did I miss this?
How do you miss that? I mean, there's so much information. That's what AI is really good at. It's find information, synthesize information, cite information. But even there, like there's just a next level to it. Like even like people are like, oh, it gets stuff wrong. Well, you could set up an agent or a project to basically you could tell it exactly how to fact check something. You could tell it how to find the root data, and then you could tell it to take it out of the agent, put it into a different AI, and have that AI fact check it. That's not perfect, but I guarantee you that's better than 99.99999% of humans.
All right, reality check. You say you found it's more confusing, clunky, and chaotic than you would hope.
For most people, yes, I have. I thought by now, because it's so good, that you'd have wider adoption, you'd have deeper adoption, and that it would really start to work itself more into work in particular. And what I found is like for maybe 1 to 2% of people, it does create almost superhuman capacity. I've seen it at our company with a lot of people. I've seen it with myself. But for a lot of people, because they don't have the time or haven't had the interest, once you introduce it into your workflow, they do find it kind of clunky, and they do find that it just creates chaos because they haven't mastered AI, and there's limitations to AI once you get into the workplace. And I'm talking, and limitations obviously at the personal side, but the workplace, once you're trying to automate something, even if a technology is really good, you still have to decide who has access to it. You still have to decide what data it has access to. You have to deal with insecurity protocols. If you're a regulated industry, you have to deal with the regulated environment. If you're a unionized shop, you have to deal with your unions. So there's a whole bunch of obstacles that it hits, which is why I think you're seeing much slower adoption inside of companies. I think on True Serum, most companies are not seeing massive, massive returns yet. I think they will. I think they will. I see the companies basically spotting what we're all seeing are the obstacles in real time and then fixing them. I just think this will take a period of time, whether it's 18 months, 24 months, to really fix itself and then work its way into your life stream and then our work stream.
Zooming out, you say that job losses from AI were overhyped, at least so far.
Yes, you and I've talked a ton about this. And if we're on True Serum, a year ago, we thought, oh, wow, we're going to save money. We're going to have greater productivity and higher profits. All those things turned out to be true. And we do have a slightly smaller staff today than we had budgeted a year and a half ago. I would say in the last 3 months, our mind, I'm about to speak for myself, my mind has shifted pretty dramatically. I now think that because of AI, we've identified at least 3 new business lines that we think could be revenue generating that just weren't possible without artificial intelligence. And therefore, I think now we'll end up hiring a lot more people in the future than we would have. Now, I think there'll be a lot of roles here that will change, and a lot already have changed. And that's the thing that scares people, but it's also a fixable thing because you essentially in the country have basically very low to almost no unemployment for people who want a job. Like to be in the fours is almost unheard of from an economist standpoint. And but so there's real opportunity for people. I think you have to figure out how to utilize AI. I think some people's jobs would change. Like if you're just a researcher or if you're doing traditional copy editing, long form, like things like that, they're going to change. And you just have to figure out how do you use this as a force multiplier. Some of those jobs might change so much that you have to do something else, but I think we have enough time to adapt.
Well, and some of the roles are going to be much more exciting. Tasks that were a chore are now replaced by something that's actually fun.
That's another, it's important. It's a big discovery is that a lot of the stuff that AI does quite well, it is the kind of the rote mechanical
The stuff you
shit that
don't
you
want
don't
on
want
your
to
plate.
do,
Yeah.
right? Like just small things like me getting research together to make a decision about whether or not we invest more in something. Like, did everyone really want to get emails from Jim? Did they want to really go have a meeting, then figure out who's going to go figure out what piece of information, then consolidate that information, then put it into a memo, then have another meeting to circulate to make sure it says what everyone wants to say? Now you can do that without the person in the loop, and they're able to spend that time doing creative things. And I think the biggest discovery of all, I think the most promising discovery inside our little laboratory is a whole new class of like superhuman workers is being created. We're seeing it here every day where there's these individuals whose brains are just wired for AI. They tend to be fact pattern recognizers. They tend to be people who think in systems. They tend to be people who are quite diligent or persistent. But these people are fantastic at taking artificial intelligence and automating things or creating kind of augmentations of things that the humans are doing. We have a couple of people already that we've moved into what we call AI enablement roles,
Mhm.
where they take those skills and they teach either their team or the entire company how to utilize artificial intelligence in a way that becomes a force multiplier for their work. And it's not been hard. I thought that would be really hard. It's actually been quite easy. We've been able to make that transition for individuals in a matter of weeks. And so I think if every company did that, especially as this technology takes a little bit of time to work its way into companies, you could have a much smoother transition that has fewer job loss, and I think, and much more enjoyment. The people that are moving into these enablement roles, they feel awesome about themselves. They feel like they're learning a new set of skills, and that, by the way, is the history of technology. So this whole debate about jobs is like you either have destruction or you have like mass job creation because of a new technology. The truth is both happen always throughout history. You have some class of jobs that go away and then technology creates new ones. That usually unfolds over a 20, 30, 40, 50-year period. This one will unfold over a 2 to 5 year period. So there's just more pain and there's more upside quicker. And it's all about calibration. It's all about, does the country, the business leaders figure out how to do those things in synchronicity?
Jim, I'm watching this video. Not everyone is going to be a super worker, but what have you learned as an AI lab rat that will help me be an empowered worker?
I think I would do, like a 30-minute challenge to yourself. Just take 30 minutes that you would have done something else. Often we spend that time just kinda looking at social media or just goofing around. Take 30 minutes a day and just use AI. Just think about it and go back and forth with it. Say that this is who I am, this is how old I am, this is what I do, this is where I do it. These are the top 3 things I do at work, and interact with it. Help me understand how I can utilize any AI technology to better do what I do, and then stick with it. Like, take one of the tasks that you come up with and really stick with it for a week or 2 or 3 weeks and just see if it starts to make a meaningful difference, because it will. It undoubtedly will if you stick with it. And I think that is available to anyone. And a good example of why I'm very bullish that if you stick with it, it has huge results. My father's 83 years old, right? Like, he's not in the workforce, has no desire to get back into it. Though apparently you could run for president these days in your 80s. He doesn't have that ambition, but he is like a prolific user of especially ChatGPT, and he's been able to use it to really dig deeper into a lot of medical issues that he's dealing with, and then use it to explain it to me and to my siblings in a language that's much more explainable.
And has acted on it.
Acted on it. He's been able to interact with his doctors in a more sophisticated way. But he also took it and spent several days using it to recreate the time back in the early 60s when he entered the military and went through all of the different tests and ports he would have had to visit and training sessions he would have had to have gone through. And he's basically recreated a period of his life that then sparked memories that he was able to put his human touch on. And now he has this like much richer understanding that he's been able to pass on to us in terms of of him entering the military and what was happening in the world at that very moment. And that just shows he's not a technologist. He's no more technologically sophisticated than anyone else. And that's what I want to say. Like, you know me better than anyone. I'm a tech dope. There's nothing I can't program. I don't understand technology other than just be benefiting from the fruits of it. But I've been able to, I think, in certain areas, create almost superhuman capabilities, and that might like cause some eye rolls. But I think you've witnessed it. I think I've been way, way more productive the last 6 months than I've ever been before. I'm able to write columns, write books, run a company, think more smartly about investment, think more smartly about health, think more smartly about future companies I might want to create or to be able to seed. And that just wasn't possible before this. And so I do, not everyone has those ambitions. And that's why I'm saying you have to make it applicable to what you specifically want to do and what problem you want to solve. Like, make it useful. Think of the problems you want to solve for yourself at work and in your life, and use it in those very specific cases. That's where you start to see the results.
Knowing you, your life story, your accomplishments, I think what you could say about this, you're not technical, but you're curious and you're disciplined. Like, how do you think those played into it? And do you think that that's how you pulled this off?
Yeah, I mean, I think the curiosity part, like, you do have to have, if you're not curious, if you don't have questions, if you don't have this sense of wonderment, it's probably not going to do that much for you. It's probably going to spit out pretty conventional things. But most people are more creative and more curious than they think. I think we sometimes tend to think of ourselves as either like, oh no, like I'm an innovator, or I'm a creative, and I'm a writer. Like, well, everyone has creativity and writing capabilities and innovation inside of them. And the trick is like utilizing the technology to bring that out.
I'd say one of the biggest learnings from you as an AI lab rat is it's not hard, but it takes persistence.
It takes persist. So another good like news you can use. Like, so how do I use it for writing? I'm sorry, and like I hire a lot of editors and reporters. It is a better editor and a better writer than anyone at the company. It just is, at least for my stuff. And you're pretty damn good. It's just good. Because I've been, well, how did it get there? Because I've fed every behind the curtain column, every transcript from these videos, every book, right? Every time I write, and whenever it spits something out, I'm like, don't do that, do this. Like, I would never say this, say that. And little by little, it really starts to mimic your voice. It starts to think like you think. And I don't ever like take it and like it's camera ready, but it always gives me ideas I wouldn't have thought of. It catches stuff all the time that I wouldn't have caught. And it just helps me think bigger about the columns. And because it moves so quickly, I could move more quickly. Like I haven't looked at my output, but my guess is I'm writing a lot more now than I did 6 months ago. Well, also, I think the company's moving faster than it did 6 months ago. Neither of those are an accident. And it's not that AI alone did that, but I think a company full of people who've embraced AI and done it kind of in a healthy, smart, clinical way have been able to do that.
You just used a phrase that stuck with me for people watching this. Like it's helped you move faster. And this is true in work, health, life.
I think so. And again, like I worry a little bit that this video is coming off like I'm almost a utopian on AI. I'm not at all. Like I think I could see so many downside risks. I think if we don't get it right, the job loss could be bad. I think if we don't get it right, I think you're going to end up with 4 or 5 super powerful companies, and you're going to end up with a hell of a big population pissed off that there's a big gap between rich and everyone else. I'm really worried if we don't get this right, that people are going to use it for really bad purposes that could lead to really bad outcomes for a large number of people. So like, I want to caution that. I'm really just talking about the application of it.
But I'm obsessed with the possibility for people I love, for people
Yeah.
I work with, for America, for the world.
Yeah, so again, I just wanted to give that stipulation because I don't want it to come off like boosterism, because it's not that. It is like the reason that I'm so bullish on it is at least for somebody who is super curious, and maybe it's because I'm 55 and I feel like the clock's ticking. I'm just able to do a lot more than I could have 6 months ago. Like that is the truth. There's no doubt about it. And I'm able to help my son on a project. I'm able to help the company build out new business lines. I'm able to help teach people how to utilize AI that I wouldn't have before. But I'm also able to write and think across more topics in the past. And so I say, tell anybody, like the upside is, again, figuring out you, not me, figuring out you. Like, what do you care about, Mike? What are 2 areas? Here's a good test. Just what are 2 areas? Take one thing personally you wish you were better at. Pick one thing professionally you wish you were better at, and engage with one model. I don't care, one of the 3. Take Gemini, take Claude, take OpenAI, and engage on that. Say, I want to set up a project, or I want to set up a conversation that you don't forget.
You would literally say that.
I would literally say that and literally do that and interface with it to help you get better at those 2 things. And then check back in 2 months. Are you exponentially better than you were before at those 2 things? If yes, then maybe pick another 2 and start to apply it to other parts of your life. And again, like you don't have to AI your entire existence. All you want out of any technology is to make life a little bit better, a little bit easier.
You say AI is the best doctor you've ever met.
It is. Like, I mean, as you know, like I have a family member who's dealing with a pretty exotic health case. And I will just say, in terms of researching really abstract topics, it's just way better than any doctor I've ever met. And it should be, right? Because it has access to the totality of medical information that's ever been posted online or fed into these machines. And I have personally tested it myself, like with putting in my vitals, putting in the health records, putting in my blood tests, putting in my supplementation, putting in things that I wrestle with. And its feedback has been marvelous and helpful, like very, very helpful, very directive. It helped me a lot in terms of interacting with my doctors, but also it's helped several times get the doctors to think a little bit more cleverly than they were thinking. And again, like you as the individual have to decide how comfortable you are with giving up that level of privacy. Like there's no guarantee. Like the companies would say, no one's ever going to see that. You could tell it, don't train your model on this, but I don't know. I guess as part of the lab rat experiment, I don't really think I have anything that interesting to hide. So if everything got out in public, I don't give a shit. And so I'm willing to take that risk. But I think a lot of people aren't. So that's a personal decision people have to make.
And I think that we text about everything. I think we assume everything's going to be out there anyway.
I do, but like some people don't. Like some people are very protective, and I get that. I'm not making a judgment call. I'm not saying my way's right, their way's right. I'm just saying that I can't do what I'm trying to do for the company or for readers if I don't kind of throw myself into it, understanding there's some level of risk at that.
And the 1,000,000-foot view of what you've learned as an AI lab rat, you say, be curious, be humble.
I would say be extremely curious and extremely humble in that I've never been more alive. I've never felt more electric in the ability to do things I never thought that could be done. And I'm very aware of the downside risks, and there are a lot of downside risks, which I'm always happy to talk about. But in terms of being able to like force multiply the ideas and the energy, it's kind of breathtaking. So like just being curious has been really beneficial. But then being extremely humble, there's a lot of self-confident people peddling a lot of bullshit online about the miracle cure of AI or just like
Well, and that will waste your time.
they just waste your time and they speak with such self-certainty. And nobody has a clue what AI is going to look like in 6 months. Nobody has a clue what it's going to mean for you and kind of your personal habits and your personal lifestyle. Nobody has a clue how quickly it'll move through companies and precisely what effect it will have on companies. People have theories, people have ideas. A lot of those theories or ideas are grounded in some truth, but just having the humility to realize there's so much we don't know. And there's so much that people self-confidently proclaim that they don't know. So if you have that humility just to spend that time to be thinking deeply, and it's never been a better time to just be thinking and utilize. That's why like that you don't want to outsource your thinking. You want to strengthen your thinking. Just think about what's about to hit us over the next couple of years, right? We're probably going to cure disease or some diseases. I would not be surprised if we have concrete cancer solutions in the next 24 months. But I also wouldn't be surprised if some asshole creates a pathogen using that exact same technology that does some level of destruction to some level of the population. And just think about that. Think about that those capabilities exist and they didn't exist before. And then think about the social, the moral, the governmental, the corporate ramifications of that. Think about that. Like, and I'm saying like we all should think about that. This is one of those periods where we should be thinking deeply. I keep coming back to like to the FDR, right? And just coming out of the Great Depression, coming out of a war or getting into a war and just rethinking kind of everything about humanity, everything about the country, everything about technology, everything about the relationship between government, corporation, and worker. And I think we're in a period like that. So you are living history. So there's never been a better time to be thinking about what's going on because you're in something that I think will be written about hundreds of years from now.
You've always been an early riser, the Midwesterner, Wisconsinian in you, but now you can't wait to wake up.
Well, in good and bad ways, to be honest. Like it is definitely messed with my mind. AI has messed with mine in mostly good ways, but in some ways that are worth like being honest about. Like the good ways are like I jump out of bed sometimes at 3 a.m. like a kid on Christmas because I've got a couple of ideas. I know I can act on them. And then you guys will wake up to a blizzard of emails at 5 and wonder if your boss had lost his marbles. And a lot of those have turned out to be pretty good ideas that we've been able to act on. So I feel just like a kind of this pulsing excitement that I've never experienced before. I will say I also feel like more anxiety. Like I don't sleep quite as well as I used to. I probably worry slightly more than I used to. And you could say, is that correlation, causation? Like, I don't know. I'll leave it to my shrink. But I think that I'm pretty certain it's tied to that. And so like there are costs to this when you're involved in these technologies. But my net takeaway is like use these technologies, like use them with your eyes wide open. Be your own fact checker, like start to see, like, does it start to have the results that you want? And in the end, I think most people will probably be passive users, passive beneficiaries of AI, which most people are with most technologies. I do think this technology in particular is one that more people can use to do a lot more at scale than they thought. A good example, right? Like you've been involved in it. My son is building an app helping young people better understand commerce.
Politic with a K.
Politics, okay. But but again, like reverse engineer that. It was not possible 18 months ago. 4 guys at 4 different universities, 3 of which have no technical skills, could not have put together an app, built an app, marketed an app, brought the app through the app store and gotten, 10,000 plus people to download it and to start to utilize it. That just wasn't possible. Anybody with that idea can. And you might be watching this and say, well, it doesn't apply to me. I'm a plumber. But I can't think of it applying more to you. My brother runs a small company. Basically, it's usually him and maybe one or two other people doing construction. One of his biggest pain points has always been he hates doing the estimates. He hates the paperwork. Well, I can't think of a better technology for creating an appraisal and an estimate system, being able to track all of your costs and all of your labor so that you could put out way more bids and probably come up with a better margin because you're doing it based on empirical data as opposed to your gut on something you don't really want to apply even your gut to.
It's the era of the AI lab rat.